missiles banging in the air. Nothing incoming here, but everyone is taking cover. They've got down. A lot of concern about what's going to happen here this night. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been unwavering in his message that Israel is at war with Hamas. Now Israel rushes to regroup with its allies. Despite the intelligence failure that appeared to lead to the attack, it is clear that the true force of the Israeli government's response is yet to come. Nick Robertson, CNN, Ashkelon, Israel.
Well, some analysts have been critical of an apparent intelligence failure by Israel, which was caught by surprise in the attack. The IDF says as many as 1,000 Hamas militants penetrated deep into southern Israel, opening fire inside towns such as here in Sderot. Add to that, waves of Hamas rockets, estimated in the thousands, rained down as far north as Tel Aviv. A former director of Mossad tells CNN the barrage was, quote, beyond our imagination.
We've had intelligence failures before, and we've been surprised, but this is the first time that the people from Gaza have been able to penetrate into Israel, deep into Israel. We had no early warning of any kind, and it was a total surprise that war broke out this morning.
Peter Layton is a visiting fellow at the Griffith Asia Institute and is an associate fellow for the Royal United Services Institute, a British security think tank. And he joins me now from Brisbane, Australia. Good to have you with us, sir. People are still very mystified by the unpreparedness of the intelligence and security services of Israel. So what I wonder, is this a case of people overestimating Israeli services, or did Israel underestimate Hamas?
I think the latter. Israel holds Hamas in fairly poor regard. So this is a tactical surprise, not a strategic surprise. Bear in mind, Israel has a strategy called mowing the lawn, which means regular wars or small wars against Hamas. There's been 7 since 2008, so it's just a matter of time before there was another one. But it's a tactical surprise as far as the scale of the attack and the timing of it. That has clearly shocked the Israelis.
How long can Hamas keep this up now? The Israeli Prime Minister has, basically declared war on Hamas. Not basically, but he has declared war on Hamas. And especially in the event of a potential Israeli ground offensive. Are they prepared to confront that?
So I think that Hamas has been chasing a couple of things here. The first one is that Hamas wants to be treated, if you like, as a regular state and wants to sit down and talk peace with the Israelis. But that means a compromise on both sides. The Israelis have never been willing to compromise before. I think that Hamas has looked back 50 years. Bear in mind that this is the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, where the Egyptians started a war purely to get the Israelis to the negotiating table. And I think this particular war might be similar. But that flows on to the second bit, is that perhaps the first part of the war's over now. Hamas wanted those hostages, and they have hundreds of them. And so the Israelis mounting a ground offensive into Gaza, as they're talking about, will be very, very difficult. So I think the hostages are a part of this as well. I think the future path of the war depends upon those hostages.
It depends on those hostages because you think they'll be used as human shields?
Very much so. The Israelis have complete control over Gaza. They can drop bombs anywhere and kill anybody. The only thing stopping
the future part of this war has to do with the hostages. Has to do with the hostages. The future part of this war has to do with the hostages. Has to do with the hostages.
Very smart. And the Israelis have been teaching, as I said, there's been about 7 wars, large and small, since 2008.
The future part of this war has to do with the hostages. The future part of this war has to do with the hostages. The future part of this war has to do with the hostages. The future part of this war has to do with the hostages. The future part of this war has to do with the hostages. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That Israel will assume that they will win the battle, and they have overwhelming force, so I'm sure that they will, but they will very likely lose the peace, and there will be more wars after this. So the big trick now will be whether Netanyahu and Hamas can now use this war as a breaking point, as an inflection point, and move from here into actually building a peace. Now, bear in mind that while the Egyptians attacked in 1973, they didn't reach a peace settlement until 1979. So when we have a ceasefire, hopefully that will sort of lead on to something better. Otherwise, this is just one more war in a long spate of wars.
Exactly. I was just going to ask you about that. I mean, we keep seeing these flare-ups. This is obviously much bigger than a flare-up. It can't be described as such. But you see these cyclical outbursts, and then there's an assault, and then the seeds for the next flare-up are planted. So, is it time for the security paradigm to be kind of reconsidered, get more creative in terms of finding another way of dealing with the situation in the ground, because it's Groundhog Day.
It is Groundhog Day. Sort of war after war after war. As I said, we might think that, but the Israelis before this were relatively sanguine. All of their wars involved very small loss of life on the Israeli side. At times, 1,000 or so on the Palestinian side.
I have a solution. Take everyone in the Gaza Strip and deport them to other countries, so there's no one left. There you go. Then you have a peaceful country that can maintain itself.
Make that leap. And bear in mind that the pictures out of Gaza are going to be very ugly, because based upon previous casualty estimates, you'd expect that this war will very likely kill between 5,000 and 6,000 Palestinians with about 10,000 casualties. So while the Israelis have certainly suffered hundreds of losses, the Palestinian side will look ugly as well.
It's a very terrifying prospect. Peter Layton, thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Coming up on CNN Newsroom, the attack on Israel shocked the world, even those who watch the state of affairs in that country very closely. We'll look at what kind of support Israel's allies are offering. That's next.
Deport everyone who lives in the Gaza Strip out of Israel to other countries, then knock it all down. That's the only solution. A song by Paula Beckman, Polly Rainbow Song, created October 7th, 2023. Give them a warning. Tell them everyone in the Gaza Strip living that you have one last chance for peace. Everybody get along forevermore. If you don't do that, then it opens up the door for one last solution. It's a doozy, so you better listen. Everyone who lives in the Gaza Strip, if they don't comply with being peaceful and letting the hat fly, well then everyone, without exception, is going to be deported to other countries and the Gaza Strip knocked down. That'll end the conflict forever. There. Solution in a nutshell.